I never noticed her at first. Every morning, I would walk through the same school gate, greet the same friends, and sit in the same classroom. Life followed the same routine, and I was too busy chasing my own dreams to notice the quiet girl who always seemed to be nearby. Her name was Emily. She wasn't the loudest person in class. She rarely raised her hand, never tried to be the center of attention, and always smiled politely whenever someone spoke to her. Most people hardly knew anything about her. I was one of them. Sometimes I caught her looking in my direction, but whenever our eyes met, she quickly looked away. I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe she was staring out the window behind me or simply lost in her thoughts. I never imagined there was another reason. Weeks turned into months. Without realizing it, Emily became a familiar part of my everyday life. She always chose a seat where she could quietly see me. She was often in the library when I was there, and somehow we always ended up walking the same hallway after class. Yet we barely exchanged a few words. "Good morning." "Thank you." "See you tomorrow." That was almost our entire conversation. To me, she was simply a kind classmate, but behind her gentle smile was a secret I couldn't see. She celebrated every little success I had without telling anyone. When I won a school competition, I noticed someone had quietly left a handwritten note on my desk. "Congratulations. Keep believing in yourself." There was no name. I smiled, assuming it was from one of my friends. I folded the note and slipped it into my bag, never realizing that the person who wrote it was standing just outside the classroom door, watching silently with hope in her eyes. And that was only the beginning of a love story I didn't even know was being written. The school year continued, and life became busier than ever. Between assignments, exams, and after-school activities, I barely had time to notice the small things happening around me. Looking back now, I realized those small moments were trying to tell me a story I simply wasn't paying attention to. Emily was always there. If I forgot a pen, someone had already placed one on my desk before class began. If I looked stressed before an exam, I would somehow find a small note tucked inside my notebook. "You've prepared for this. Believe in yourself." Again, there was no signature. I laughed with my friends, guessing who the mysterious writer might be. Some joked that I had a secret admirer, but I brushed it off. It felt impossible. Why would anyone like someone as ordinary as me? Meanwhile, Emily quietly listened from across the room. She smiled whenever she heard me laugh, even though she knew I had no idea the notes came from her. One rainy afternoon, I forgot my umbrella. As I stood outside the school entrance wondering how to get home, I noticed an umbrella leaning against the wall with a small piece of paper attached. "You might need this today." "No name." I looked around, hoping to thank whoever had helped me, but all I saw was students rushing through the rain. Hidden behind a nearby pillar, Emily watched me pick it up. For a brief second, our eyes almost met. She quickly turned away before I could recognize her. I walked home thinking I had been incredibly lucky. She walked home in the rain. That evening, I couldn't stop wondering who had been so thoughtful. Little did I know, someone had quietly chosen my happiness over her own comfort. And with every silent act of kindness, Emily's hidden love grew deeper while I remained completely unaware. Time passed, and graduation slowly crept closer. Everyone around me seemed excited about the future. Friends talked about university, careers, and moving to different cities. We promised to stay in touch, but deep down we all knew life was about to change. Emily became even quieter. She still smiled whenever I passed by, but there was a sadness in her eyes that I couldn't understand. I thought she was simply nervous about graduation, just like everyone else. One afternoon, our teacher announced a class project. We were paired together. It was the first time Emily and I had spent more than a few minutes talking. At first, she seemed shy, speaking softly and choosing her words carefully. But as we worked together, I discovered she was thoughtful, intelligent, and surprisingly funny. I found myself looking forward to our meetings. For the first time, I saw the real Emily. On the final day of our project, she handed me a small notebook. "I thought you might like this," she said with a gentle smile. Inside were inspiring quotes, little sketches, and pages filled with encouragement for chasing dreams. She had written them in beautiful handwriting, but nowhere did she mention how long she had worked on it. "It's amazing," I said. Her eyes sparkled for just a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. I had no idea that every page had been written with love. Graduation day arrived sooner than expected. Students laughed, took photos, and signed each other's yearbooks. Amid the excitement, Emily stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, holding a folded letter in her hands. Several times she walked toward me. Several times she turned back. As the ceremony ended, she watched me leave with my friends. The letter remained unopened in her hands. That evening she slipped it into a small box beneath her bed, wondering if some feelings were simply meant to remain unspoken. I drove away believing graduation was the end of one chapter. I never realized I had just walked away from someone who had loved me all along. Years slipped by faster than I ever imagined. Life carried me in different directions. I moved to another city, started my career, met new people, and became busy chasing goals I once dreamed about as a student. The memories of school slowly faded. One quiet Sunday afternoon, I decided to clean out an old box that had been sitting in the corner of my apartment for years. Inside were faded photographs, certificates, and a small notebook. The notebook. It was the one Emily had given me before graduation. As I turned its pages, something caught my attention. Tucked inside the back cover was a folded envelope I had never noticed before. My heart began to race. On the front, written in neat handwriting, were just 4 words. "For when you're ready." With trembling hands, I opened it. The letter was dated on our graduation day. "I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to give you this, but I want you to know the truth. I've liked you for a long time. You probably never noticed, and that's okay. Seeing you smile was always enough to make my day brighter. I don't expect anything in return. I only hope your future is filled with happiness, because you deserve it." I read those words once, then again, and again. Suddenly, every anonymous note, every encouraging message, the umbrella on that rainy afternoon, and every quiet smile came rushing back. It had always been Emily. The realization hit me harder than I could explain. How had I been so blind? I searched for her name online that very night. After hours of searching, I finally found an old social media profile. There were no recent updates, no new photos, no way to contact her. For the first time in years, I wished I could go back. Not to change my own future, but to tell the girl who loved me in silence that her kindness had never been forgotten, even if I had realized it far too late. Years passed, but some memories never truly disappear. I often wondered what would have happened if I had noticed her feelings earlier, if I had looked beyond her quiet smiles, her gentle words, and the way she always stood beside me when I needed someone. Maybe we could have had a different story. One day, I found an old letter she had written but never gave to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, she wrote about all the little moments she treasured. The times we laughed together, the days she secretly worried about me, and how happy she was just to be part of my life. She never asked for anything in return. She only wanted me to be happy. Reading those words made me realize something painful. Sometimes the person who loves us the most is not the one who speaks the loudest. Sometimes love hides in the smallest actions, in silent sacrifices, and in the moments we are too busy to notice. I searched for her, hoping I could finally tell her what I should have said years ago. When I found her, she smiled warmly, but life had already changed. She had moved on. She had built a new life, and she deserved the happiness she always wished for me. I apologized for not seeing her love sooner. She simply replied, "I never loved you because I wanted you to choose me. I loved you because you mattered to me." Those words stayed in my heart forever. I learned that love is not always about holding on to someone. Sometimes true love means being grateful that someone once cared for you so deeply. She loved me in silence, and even though our story never became what I dreamed of, her kindness changed me forever. Some people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to teach us the meaning of love. And she will always be the love I never noticed, until it was too late.